we're live right now, Deirdre, and that intro I think we paid $5 or $25 on Fiverr.com to have that intro made. It was gonna live for like about a month until we got a better one made, and it's been years and we haven't replaced it. And I hadn't listened to it in like 2 years, and someone in the office played it. I'm like, that's the intro to our podcast?
Yes, it is.
I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to change that immediately. So we're currently working on a better one.
I imitate him every time. Every time.
Gosh.
I imitate it as I'm listening to it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
it's
a bit of an embarrassing intro, but it's kind of, maybe it's taken on a life of its own.
Are you ready?
I would say that's taken on a life of its own. Now,
Yes.
if you can create something that is a match for that, or like over the top even more, then that would even
Yeah.
go further.
Yeah.
Okay.
So listen, thanks to all of you. So I'm sitting here with Deirdre Dunne. Notice how I said Deirdre?
I'm very impressed.
The reason I said Deirdre is because Deirdre, we've known each other, I feel like it's been 10 years, something like that.
2009, I think.
2009? Holy smokes. And I, for the longest time, was calling you, what was I calling you?
Oh,
Deirdre?
yeah,
Deirdre.
maybe.
And there's an R in the name before the D. It's Deirdre.
Yeah, like
So
Dear Tom.
I stand correct. Yes. Yes. And Jillian Henderson and her daughter, Taylor, are here. Taylor, I just didn't repeat your last name now. I just thought for privacy reasons in my mind, I'm like, I'm not repeating your last name, but Jillian and Taylor are here. Thanks to all of you for being here. You didn't have to come all this way to be here. We're very thankful.
This is exciting.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Thanks, Taylor. And then Jillian, Deirdre, you were just asking Jillian, what in your past life you were in?
Oh, Deirdre asked me, how did I get into being a pharmaceutical sales rep, right?
From television.
Yeah, from television. I think I was
Television.
more
Where do you
interested in
make
the
that leap?
television. Yeah, like how did you get into television?
That was graduate from high school and applied to radio and television arts at Ryerson University. I got in. It was a 3-year degree, and then I worked in production for a few years. But I guess out of that, I had a family member who was a pharma rep, and I wanted. His life looked way better than mine. So I said, can I job shadow you for a day? He said, sure. So I did. And I said, boom, that's what I want to do.
Because this is such an easy job, and you get paid for lunch, you get a car, all your technology.
Cell phones covered, gas covered even on weekends and evenings.
Why, Deirdre, do you have a background in pharma sales?
That's how we
too?
met.
Oh, that's how you guys met?
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea.
So
I didn't know.
Yeah, I came from pharmaceutical. I was in pharmaceutical sales for 10 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I
me
forgot that before you went into real estate.
Yes.
Holy smokes. So you
Yeah.
guys knew each other in a past life.
Yes, sort of, but
At the same company even.
Yeah.
But we bumped into each other at a doctor's office, not even knowing we were with the same company.
yes.
Wow.
I was contract, you were permanent at the time.
Yes,
So it was a
exactly.
little bit of a different category.
Yeah.
So you both are telling me there's money in pharma, eh?
No, not anymore.
Oh, there's not? Oh,
No.
I was making a joke. I thought,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
lots of money in pharma.
No.
No? There's
You'll
no?
notice we both don't work in it anymore.
Yeah.
Really? So why is there no money in pharma anymore? They just changed the way the sales are done?
Okay, so in 10 years,
Pull
I
the
went,
mic closer to you. For some reason, I'm not picking you up as strongly as I want to.
So in 10 years, I went through 5 downsizings, 3 in 3 years. So I spent most of my time looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next downsizing was going to happen. And I was very conscious of never wanting to be at the very top, never wanting to be at the very bottom. You really just want to be in the middle.
You're talking about the sales.
Sales, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's where you don't get let go when you're directly in the middle.
Wow.
So I got
What
really
a way to
tired.
live, right? Like we've all
It
been
was
in
horrible.
that spot. Yeah.
I'll always remember this when I decided to leave pharma. I was driving from Owen Sound down to Collingwood, and I think it's Highway 21, and it was like May or June, like a perfect day for driving. Here I am in a company-paid automobile,
And nice cars too.
nice car, just had my lunch paid for by the company, had, all my tech paid for by the company, my internet, everything. And it's a beautiful day, and I'm driving down, and I could see Collingwood, ski hills to the right, and the water to the left. And I'm thinking, am I ever so lucky? And I thought, yeah, and I could leave this in a moment. And I knew at that point, that was when I decided my exit. I needed to leave.
And when did you leave? What year was that?
2015, January 2015.
That's funny because I left November 2015, but I was downsized and that was it.
Yeah, I just left.
You quit. You resigned.
Deirdre, that's interesting. That takes a lot of guts to just quit. How old were you at that time, roughly, if you don't mind me asking?
well,
Give me a ballpark. Give me a ballpark. Give me a
I don't
ballpark.
mind saying, I used to lie about my age, so I'll be 62 next month.
Oh my gosh, you look great.
Yeah.
You're
Thanks.
62 next month?
Yes.
I would have
great.
never guessed that.
That's great that you don't lie or don't subvert.
I used to.
I know
I
that's
used to
good because
lie
that
for-
means you're good. Like you're comfortable in yourself.
I used
now.
to take 5 years off.
You could.
Yeah.
No one would
Wow.
know.
So you quit.
So I was in my 50s.
Wow.
And I went, yeah. And so at that point, I already had investment properties. And I used to joke with my husband, when I retire, I'm going to become a real estate agent because that's a great job to have when you're retired.
Geez. Yeah.
And then, and I'm not retired. And,
I bet you're busier than you ever were.
Yeah,
I bet.
I was busier than I ever was. But because we had moved a lot, my husband and I had moved. I was calculating this on the weekend. By the time my eldest daughter was 10, we'd moved 5 times. And in 30 years marriage, I think I've moved 12 times.
And sorry, why were you moving that much?
Oh, because I thought it was an adventure, and we'd move, fix up a house,
Oh,
go
got
on
it.
to the next house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
So I was in real estate. I was sort of investing already. Didn't like the industry. It was just, wasn't for me. I was tired of corporate life. So I thought, what else can I do? And I thought, you know what? I think I could go into real estate.
Is that when we crossed paths? Or
No.
we had already crossed
No,
paths?
so this was 2000. So I decided to start working on my real estate license. If I left in 2015, I probably started working on it 2 years before, so 2013.
Got
and
it.
I came to Rockstar in 2009.
Yeah, wow. Okay,
And
that's how I
I think
remember
I'm
it,
the
yeah.
only person who didn't come off the internet.
Really?
Yeah,
No, we
because-
have a bunch. How did
Oh.
you find us? Was it one of the newspaper ads?
No, it was out in Calgary at a
Oh my gosh.
week-long real estate investment course.
Yeah.
And the guy who was putting it on had investors up on
I remember we were on a
session,
panel.
A
Yeah, yeah.
panel, and you and Nick were the only ones from Ontario. And I went, I got to talk to those guys. And then you said you were from Burlington, and I made a beeline as soon as it was over.
Yeah, at the time our office was in
Yeah,
Burlington.
yeah.
Wow, so that's how we crossed paths.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm so happy that you guys are here because I think just before we started recording, you were saying there's not enough women on the podcast.
Well,
So
there's
now
3 right
we're
here.
fixing. Now we're fixing that. But I'll tell you, it's not by choice. There's not enough women on the podcast. Can I tell you why there's often not enough women on the podcast? Because
Yeah.
women are slightly more humble than men. So when we ask them to share their, surprise, surprise, right? So when we ask women to share their story, they always feel not worthy. Oh, what do I have to share? What am I going to say? And guys, when you ask guys, are like, absolutely, I'll come on the podcast. I'll tell everybody how to invest. I'll share my story. So, and that kind of happened with you both. When I approached
Yes.
you and said, because I think you came to me at
Yes.
one of the events that
It
we
was
were
the
doing.
Entrepreneur Boot Camp.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and you were like, "Hey, you should have more women on the podcast." And I asked both of you to come on the podcast, and you were both.
like,
What was your reaction?
No,
Take it aback.
There is nothing I have to share. There are
Yeah.
people doing way more than me.
Yes.
Why would anyone want to
Yeah,
listen?
I was so happy to get that reaction, Jillian, and you were very similar. You were like, "No,
Well,
what do I have to
yeah,
share?"
Yeah, we went up. We kind of went up. You said there needs to be more women, and there we were, 2 women talking to Tom saying there needs to be more women. You put it back on us, and we were both like, "Oh, I don't think so."
Yeah. So then we
then-
came up with the idea to have you both come here
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Taylor, your daughter, has now joined us, so I'm forever grateful for this. So thank you.
Taylor's off a day of school for this.
No way.
Grade 12.
Great. I'm happy. Grade 12 even. Ooh,
This
that's
is way
serious.
better education.
That's serious. Yeah. So I got to ask, why? I don't know who wants to go first, but why go down the real estate investing journey? Jillian, do you want to start? Maybe let's
Sure.
start with you. Why did you go into real estate? What was the thinking? Were you pulled into it? Was it something you wanted to do yourself? Kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for me, it was at a friend's house on the coffee table was the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I picked it up in an idle moment. From the first paragraph, I was hooked. I said, this guy understands me right from the get-go. And this book offered the promise of the answer that I was looking for. Because I knew something wasn't quite right in how finances worked, personal finance, economics, what I had, the path laid out before me was all I knew. But I read his book and I said, okay, I'm turned on. This is how it's got to be. And that was the beginning. And that was the jump start I needed to move on. So that's how I did it.
And then what did you do next? Did you jump into a type of real estate? Were you looking for someone to help you? Like, what's the next step after somebody reads a book like that? I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I already did own a house by that point, my own house I lived in, but with no thoughts to renting or investment purposes. I think the next move after that was, it took a few years, but jumped in with 2 feet and bought an 8-plex in Kitchener. Was our first rental property.
Wow.
I knew that and I had forgotten.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. So you went from nothing to an 8-plex?
8-plex. Yeah, on the commercial
I shouldn't
side.
say nothing, not nothing, but I mean, you went from little experience investing to an 8-plex.
Exactly.
I forgot.
Yeah. And that was on the commercial side of lending, which was, everyone told us, well, that's a whole other world over there. Watch out, it's the boogeyman on the commercial side, different rules and all that. But I got into it, and I was the first property manager. Like, we didn't hire out to anybody. And I bought that as a joint venture with my spouse at the time, my husband, but I was the lead on property management. So I really cut my teeth on that in a big, big way. A lot to learn, steep learning curve, but it worked out. It worked out.
Awesome.
But,
yeah, good for you doing the property management yourself too, because that's ultimately how you learn. And Nick and I have always believed that, like, when you're starting off, manage the property yourself, even though it's a real pain in the ass, manage it yourself, because then you learn what is going on. So when you hire a property manager, you don't feel like you're getting taken advantage of.
Exactly.
Not that they're taking advantage of you,
Well, you
but
know what questions to ask.
you know what questions to ask. You know if they're marking up some repairs a little excessively.
And which happened later. So I knew what was going on. I said, this can't be right. No way.
Yeah.
And I was working full time as a farmer rep at the same time. And we had 2 little ones at home.
Oh my gosh.
So it was a busy stress. It was kind of stressful because the house was, the 8-plex was about a 25-minute drive from where we lived. So to go out in the evening to deal with something, 2 little ones at home. So anyway, family life.
Did you have good tenants? Or did you have a lot of tenant issues?
I would probably about middle of the road. They were good. Some were great. Some had a little challenge. But it wasn't that the tenants were bad, but with an 8-plex, there was more often turnover. Right. And they were the younger set. They're mostly in their 20s, and they're people moving out of their parents' home for the first time. So there was turnover, and these were all 1-bedroom apartments. So it wasn't that they were bad. It just required someone like me to be on top of what's going on.
Did you ever have to go through an eviction process in any of the tenants there?
I did give N5s on occasion. Never had to go through with it. Never went to the LTB on that.
N5.
That was the sort of the
reasonable
enjoyment.
Okay, so you had some
behavior.
tenants complaining that other tenants were just music too loud?
Yeah, noise, or one tenant got a dog, and then he let the dog take poops on the front lawn and didn't clean it up, and other people complained.
Got it. So typical kind of property management type stuff.
Yeah, one time there was a very, very heavy rainfall and water came in someone's basement apartment, and so she called, and we could hear her mopping up the water while she's on the phone with us.
How did you manage that one?
I think we called a property cleanup guy, like what are those companies that will do remediation.
And did the building have some faults somewhere that you had to correct?
Well, yes, exactly. Yeah, there was. When we bought the building, it was fine, but when you got a heavy rain, that retaining wall just wasn't enough. So subsequently, when the area dried up, we called in a mason, and he built up a better wall, better drainage.
And then from that property, did you go on to more multi-units, or did you go? You kind of went. I feel like you had some single-family type homes in your possession at some point.
Yeah, we did a bunch of that. The 8-plex was the biggest that we ever went to. But subsequently, we bought a couple of townhouses that we did rent-to-owns. And you're well aware we did a joint venture with yourself and Nick.
Feels like another lifetime ago, but I remember.
Yeah. So there was the 8-plex, and then there was a couple of rent-to-own homes, and then subsequently sold the 8-plex. And then on my own, as myself with no other partners at all, got a triplex, a duplex, a semi-detached, and another detached, and then the Blue Mountain condo. Yeah. And my own house.
I should just leave now.
Are you listening to your mom here? So when did
Absolutely. I've been there.
Pull the mic. Come right into the mic.
I've been there the whole way. I've been very interested in everything she's been doing. When she goes out and does those regular just checks on the properties, something needs to be done, I come along so I can see it, so I can learn. I'm very interested in this. It's something I want to do in the future. Yeah. And I've been able to have the greatest teacher right next beside me.
I'm getting goosebumps listening to this.
That's so nice.
This is amazing. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
So Jillian, I mean, I guess the confidence that you gain, like I know when I do something new, whether it's going to the gym or getting into real estate investing, and when you're faced with problems that you can then overcome, the confidence you gain as a person, I feel is almost the biggest benefit. because then you feel like in life you can accomplish anything. Because when you are faced with a water leak and you can get through it without knowing about a mason contact or anything, and you kind of get through it just gives you this confidence like you're going to get through anything. Yeah. And I think that kind of rubs off on Taylor, maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously, that she sees her mom doing stuff and then that just feels normal to her. So
it is. I totally agree with that, because my daughter's now interested in Bitcoin and real estate. And she goes, oh, I really would like to have my own place and stuff. So it does rub off. And I'm glad it does, because she's starting from a way better place than my husband and I ever did. From knowledge, from just how to build wealth. I mean, I had no idea.
Yeah. I agree with that. It's been a real learning curve.
Yeah.
And I think the financial now into like all these properties you're naming off. By the way, where are they? Are they all scattered across Ontario? Or?
No. I made a conscious decision after we sold the 8-plex that all my next new properties would be in Cambridge, all within a 15-minute drive of my home. So I've chosen Cambridge and focused on that. That way I know who's on council. I know what the bylaws are. I know what to expect, or the pricing, price points.
Very good value.
Yeah.
I like it.
As a real estate agent knows.
Oh, yeah. Deirdre, do you live in Cambridge?
No.
Oh, but you do business in Cambridge.
Yeah. So Guelph, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge are all 4 cities that are really close together. And it's really interesting because lots of agents actually don't go between cities. It's like, I call it the Great Divide between Guelph and Kitchener-Waterloo.
Yeah.
It's like
down Highway 7.
Yeah, that Highway 7 is like, going to Timbuktu. But I do cover those areas. And right now, Cambridge is the most affordable, although it's quickly catching up. Then it would be Kitchener, Guelph, then Waterloo.
Are there still investment opportunities, do you feel, in Cambridge? I guess that's a question to both of you. Yeah. What kind of things do you think? What do you like in Cambridge? What type of property, as an investment, let's say?
Yeah. So it would have to be, condos are always tricky because of your condo fees, right? They always eat away at your profit. So it's hard to make a condo cash flow often. So today, just like everywhere else, it really has to have probably 2 units. You guys were talking about how 5 years ago you could buy a whole house and it would cash flow, and now you need 2 units in that house.
It's interesting. What we see over time is that property prices will increase faster than rents.
Yeah.
So we go through a period of time where property prices increase, and then there's no cash flow because the rent hasn't increased. But then rents catch up. And there's a period of overlap where a straight rental property, single family home, will actually cover or cash flow for maybe like 6 months, a year. And then property prices rip again, and there's no more cash flow on straight rent, and you have to go to these other things. And I feel like we just had rents catch up really strongly. Like rents have just shot up right across the board, from multi-units to single, everything.
Tell me about it. I'm locked in some leases at lower rents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we all are. Yeah, we all are. But then property prices in the last 6 months, last 2 years, but then in the last 6 months, even the last 3 months, just went straight up again. So now we're in that space where you do need like the second unit. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to learn how this kind of ebbs and flows a little bit, right? So Cambridge.
But in terms of, let's say, a 2-unit place, you're going to pay less more often than not in Cambridge than you would in Kitchener or Guelph or Waterloo for the exact same value.
Got it. Okay. More bang for your buck in Cambridge. Yeah. Okay, so then Jillian, I'm curious, now that you've gone through this, and Taylor's kind of involved in this now because she's watching her mom, and it sounds like participating in some of this. Looking back, what was one of your fears that has come true or has not come true? Can you recall any, or does it just seem so distant?
Wow.
Deirdre, you're blocking Jillian's camera a bit. Could you move over a little?
Oh, there we go. Taylor
Thank
watching
you.
for her mom. There, see how advanced we are with our camera work? We should have picked up on that. Thank you, Taylor. So, Julie, does anything come to mind?
Well, all I can say is that I have moved, my goals have moved away from wanting to be actively managing my properties, and I want to go into being more passive. So I wouldn't call it a fear, but rather a change in my philosophy or attitude is to be more hands-off and to get away from tenants and toilets and get away from having a direct relationship with a tenant. And I'd much rather go to the other kinds of real estate investing that allow me to be more business to business and less hands-on. So that would be my change in direction. I can't identify any fears.
Yeah, it's interesting
though.
because I'm just reflecting back on watching you over the years, and I've never really seen you freak out about anything in particular.
I've had freakouts.
Yeah, what were they about?
Freakouts were a few years ago. I was showing an apartment in the triplex to a prospective tenant. She's behind me. We go into the stairs. I'm going to show her the basement. And I enter into a room, and it's drywalled, and I saw mold all over the wall that for the first time that I didn't know was there. And she's behind me. She hasn't come around the corner yet. And I turned around and I said, you know what? We don't need to see this room. Thanks. Let's go back upstairs. So she was done looking. She left. I get on the phone with mold. I had to find mold remediation, book the guy, come in. And so that was a freak out moment of, I'd never dealt with that amount of mold. I'm talking about an arc across a wall.
Mm-hmm. But that's interesting to me because you're describing something that, yeah, sure, you haven't dealt with that mold, but you're not describing, I took on a bunch of debt. I was scared of vacancy. You're describing something that just needed to be handled that you hadn't handled.
Yeah, I hadn't handled it before, but I did handle it, I would say, pretty well. It bothered me that I was discovering it as a tenant, a prospective tenant was with me in the moment. That bothered me. But once she left, then I kind of, okay, now let's get it together and go on and deal with it.
Did you ever have fears around the money aspect of it, where you were borrowing a lot of money and responsible for all these mortgages?
Yeah, last year, when I bought the condo in Blue Mountain, I decided that I was over leveraged, that if everything was fine, it was fine. But if anything did go wrong, I was going to be underwater. So that was the impetus to sell the duplex. So I sold a duplex, just closed in January this year.
Got it.
So it took a while to sell and close, but I decided if I took on more debt for the condo, I had to release some debt over here.
And the Blue Mountain property, that was a lifestyle decision.
That's right. It's in the rental pool, so it does generate an income. But it was...
so it's right in the village at Blue Mountain, and it's part of the rental pool. Mm-hmm. And then you get to use it a certain amount of days. Is that how that works?
Yeah, the maximum is 10 nights a month.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
so
you just brush things off like it's so easy. Like,
well, it's like a shell game.
Like, this isn't really a big deal. The hardest thing I found was like a mold and everything else. All these mortgages I qualified for really wasn't that hard. Yeah. So good for you. I mean, not many people have that type of mentality.
I've had challenges with some tenants. I had a challenge last year with someone that I probably didn't screen as well as I should have, and I had to ask her to leave. She just moved in, and by 6 days later, 3 days later I asked her to leave, and by 6 days she had left. So actually, I had to do a cash for keys thing. Oh, yeah.
And did you have to go high on the cash? You don't have to tell us how much if you don't want to, but did you have to go pretty high?
No, the paralegal I talked to said I got away pretty easy.
So the highest we've heard, and I don't know if it's the same person that we're referring to, is somebody paid $30,000 to get rid of a tenant. Yeah, right in the middle of COVID to get rid of a tenant.
I heard of that. Yeah. I heard someone interviewed on a podcast, and she was describing that problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're probably talking about the same
person.
Mine was way
less. Yeah, good for you.
Way less, like just moving costs and 1 month's rent.
Oh, that's very good.
So what comes from reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then getting these properties, because you have a bunch of real estate right now, and then knowing that your daughter Taylor is kind of watching all this stuff, what comes to mind when when I say, what do you want her to pick up from watching you? What are you hoping that she notices? What comes to mind when I say that?
I think it would be beneficial for Taylor to recognize that, here's a stat, I don't know if it's true, but I like the stat, so I'm going to quote it anyway, that of all the money that's made in the world, that 3% of it is made from people laboring for wages, and that the 97% of wealth that's made in the world is made from not laboring for wages, albeit dividends from stocks and increase in property values. So I think if I could instill that in Taylor, that there's a whole other world out there that does not involve trading your time for money, as in hourly wages, and hoping for the next increase in the minimum wage rules, then I would say that would be a success if Taylor could see that other world of finance beyond trading time for money.
That's awesome.
Yeah, great lesson.
I
feel
lesson.
like that's where I feel like I just got ripped off when nobody told me exactly what you shared, Jillian. When and for me that was in my 20s when I realized, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work out how I wanted. I'm not going to be vacationing and traveling the world as I envisioned. I'm going to be punching the clock here for a long time. Yeah. So then, Deirdre, a bit of your story, and Jillian, we can come back to you. Deirdre, a bit of your story. How did you? When you got started in the investing side, you were moving your family around.
Yes.
And did that then eventually turn into, I'm going to get some income property?
Yeah. So early on, when we originally, I grew up in Toronto, and our first house was in Toronto. And my husband said, why don't we rent out the basement? And I went, no. Why would I want to do that? I don't want someone living below me. And then we moved to Guelph. He bought a business in Kitchener. I went back to school. And I said, yeah, I want some income property. I want a mortgage helper. That's what it was called, a mortgage helper. And so we rented out our basements, always in Guelph. And then we moved to, and so that was sort of accidental. It started off as a mortgage helper and never really thought of it as real estate investing or anything. It was just, I was going to school, I was home part-time, it was helping pay the mortgage, really. But then, I forget, I think we started to do, I went to Millionaire Mind with T. Harv Eker and went through all those courses. And I think it's through there that I started to think, oh, yeah, time for money, trading your time for money. Oh, there's all this other whole world that I really didn't know anything about or very little. And I'm embarrassed to say because I'm a business grad.
Don't be embarrassed. I'm seeing what my son's curriculum looks like at Western. I don't think there's anything really that they would have taught you in that program. I'm a horrible parent. My son's taking this business course, and I just get on the phone with him. I'm like, really? Yeah. That's what they're teaching you? And then we both kind of chuckle, and we're like,
for
okay.
that tuition
yeah,
too?
for that tuition too. Yeah, holy smokes.
So
there's some practical stuff though. Accounting. There are some practical things that you're learning
I'm
too.
Horrible at accounting, but yes.
Same here. Credits, debits.
Yeah.
I don't know. Here's a receipt. Can you put it in somewhere?
Exactly. I can put it in Dext. So I think that started me on a journey of kind of self-exploration and trying to earn another sort of income. But I was always interested in real estate. So I think buying and selling those homes, I always thought it was truly an adventure. And my friends made fun of me and said, this is before, you had your cell phone, you put it in your cell phone. They actually had an address book. And they'd say, we put you in pencil because you move so much. And then I read Kiyosaki's book. And
Why did you read Kiyosaki's book? Like, what is it that gets a person to that point? Like, that's such a common thing for all of us. Like, Jillian just found it at the perfect time. Like, the universe is speaking to us in certain ways, right? And then now you're saying that book too.
Yeah, I read it. I remember exactly where we were living.
Someone gave it to you, or you
know what? I can't even remember how I even got the book. I just remember reading it and seeing those quadrants. That's the one thing I remember and going, right, I got to be in that quadrant.
Yeah, the cash flow quadrant follow-up, right?
Yeah, and I just thought, how do I get there? And I guess I'm slowly getting there. 62. And then I think, so I think it was through a Millionaire Mind that I got into the real estate stream, and then going to that course, and then meeting you guys, and then learning about rent to own.
What does your husband say when you say, because that thing that we spoke at was in Calgary.
Yeah.
What does your husband say when you come home one day or at dinner one day, you say, I'd like to go to Calgary to this conference? No. Yeah. So how did you overcome that?
He wasn't happy about it. He was actually quite angry at the time. And I just knew in my heart of hearts, like in my bones, I said, I know this is the right thing to do. I just know it. And I went off and did it. And then I came home. I said, I think we can make this work. And so I got really great tips, like use a mortgage broker who's an investor themselves so that they understand. And then I went to your class.
It's such basic stuff that we didn't know. Because when I heard that too for the first time, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is such a smart tip.
A light bulb comes on.
Yeah, now looking back, I'm like, really? I couldn't figure that out by myself?
Well, because you don't really...
You don't know what you don't know, right? Yeah, it's hilarious. So good for you.
Yeah, so then, and then I went to your class and rent to own and said, okay, we can do that. And I did 3 rent to owns.
What's your husband saying during this time? Because now you're active, you're buying properties.
Yeah, he was on board by that time.
Yeah, awesome.
So now he's the one who says, we should be buying another property. We should be buying another property.
Can you identify why he changed his mind on that?
I think that it worked out, that it was cash flowing, that it worked out, that it wasn't as complicated. He was never one worried about the money. I'm always worried about the money. I'm always the one thinking,
In what way are you worried about the money? So
when you talked about overextending yourself, things are going to go bad, I'm going to miss the opportunity. I grew up in a environment where I always joke, God bless my mom, she's passed, but if you had a new idea, something that was radical, she would tell you all the bad things that were going to happen. So I grew up in sort of that. So like when I decided to leave my corporate job to go back to school, I mean, I told her 2 weeks before I was going to go, like everything was done. I'd given notice, I'd paid my tuition because I just knew what I was going to expect from her. So I think I kind of brought that mindset, but I'm getting over it. I
feel like you are, just watching you. I feel like I can see a change in you since we first met.
Yeah.
You seem a much more, I don't know if you weren't confident before, but much more open about what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know,
probably much more open.
And maybe much more confident about explaining what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like you have a lot of amazing experience now, so maybe that's why it's coming across that way.
Maybe.
Sometimes I think about what you just said, though. Like our parents all grew up through a rough few decades. And there are some of their defining years where when interest rates were really high. So they always taught their kids, don't carry debt because interest rate was high. We've all come to learn like, okay, that's the worst advice that you could have ever given us because when interest rates are low, you want to carry debt. So now,
and there's different types of debt.
Money is so cheap.
Money's cheap, yeah.
And there's different types of debt.
Yes.
So all debt was seen as bad, but really not all debt's bad. If you have debt for a property, that's different than debt on a car that's losing.
So yeah,
right?
we finally all learned that lesson.
Yeah.
Here's my fear. So now we're kind of over the last 2 decades, interest rates have been really low. So now we tell Taylor, hey, Taylor, you know what? You just want to load up the debt. You just want to load up the debt because interest rates are low.
And then judiciously.
Yes.
No,
and I guess
this is
where I'm headed because you just never know. Like so.
Well, today the rate interest hike, right?
Yeah. Well, was it at 10 o'clock?
It was. Yeah. It's.
I don't even know what they announced.
The rate is 0.5.
Come closer to the mic.
It went up a quarter point. So the new current rate is 0.5%.
Wow.
Overnight rate.
0.5.
So I just did a little chart. Actually, I took it from Edge Realty Analytics.
Oh, cool.
Analytics.
Yeah.
And it showed I calculated on 500,000 mortgage. So 0.25 is like an extra $100 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We've gone ahead and doubled the overnight lending rate. Like it's atrocious to 0.5.
So most people can absorb that easy.
Yeah.
Because everyone lives on cash flow these days.
Yeah. Exactly. And I guess that's just kind of where I'm headed though with this is like we kind of chuckle at these interest rate raises because we're like, okay, they really can't raise rates. Like there's all this stuff going on. They can't get too high. I get like obsessive compulsive sometimes about like the debt levels and stuff. But then in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking we still have to be careful because if we say, hey, Taylor, we know it all. Don't worry. Just go buy any piece of property anywhere in Guelph. You're going to be fine, even if it's like negative cash flowing, because the asset's going to appreciate because interest rates are low and our real rates are negative. In the back of my mind, I'm still scared. That's why I feel like we all need to talk about cash flow.
Yeah.
Still, even though it's hard to find and always harder to find. How do you guys think about that?
Absolutely. I think cash flow. So I was always taught you want a cash flowing property. And I always tell clients who are saying, well, yes, but the appreciation, I'm going to buy a pre-built condo, and the appreciation, I'm going to sell it. I'm going, okay, that's good, but that's also called speculation because you have no control over what happens. But the cash flow, I have a lot more control over. But it is harder, although my mindset is really kind of changing now because I look back over, let's say, the last 10 years, and if I had pushed myself and bought an extra property, where would I be today? So going through sort of that squeeze, there's benefit. Truly overextending yourself, yes. But what if you can afford an extra $100 a month out of pocket to have that? I think long term, you're way better off because someone else is paying down that mortgage.
So you're saying the rents will catch up eventually, and you'll be good, like the diagram that Tom was talking about.
And if you push yourself harder 10 years ago, you would have had another asset that has like since tripled. I'm joking, but probably has
You're
tripled.
probably right.
Yeah.
You're probably right.
So that's where you're headed with that.
Yeah.
It's funny with the power of, reflection, what you kind of think about your own life, right?
Oh, there's so many homes that I used to own that I wish I owned today, and I don't.
Mm-hmm.
All 3 of my rent owns. I wish I owned those. But, and then I think I help families that all 3 of those families would never have been able to buy without the rent-own program.
Deirdre, what about family and friends when you're doing this? Okay, before you were moving around, but now you're getting into like rent-to-own. None of your friends had heard of these strategies. And then, you're doing all this stuff. Do they start kind of trying to advise you like, Deirdre, you're getting a little crazier now?
No, they just think, I am the only one. I was thinking about this, I guess because I was coming here. I am the only one of my friends and relatives that is into real estate, crypto. They nothing.
So none of them have jumped on board. None of them have followed
None.
you. Wow.
I guess I'm a really bad salesperson, obviously.
No. But I mean, you're probably just private about it, and
Yeah.
you're probably not like me and Nick ranting on and on about it. And you're probably just like a nice person.
Yeah.
You're probably like a nice person who just
A
does what
nice
she
person.
wants to do and doesn't like brag about it. And there's the rest of us out here like, hey, you should probably buy these properties. This is the best thing since sliced bread. So
But
you're
yeah.
probably just a nice person,
But
Deirdre.
and some
That's-
people,
Thanks, Tom.
are never going to do what you're
No.
doing or we're doing. They're just not.
Yeah, do you have any
geared for
friends that have watched what you've done, Jillian, and said,
Whew. I haven't had too much negativity. I've had people who've just been on the sidelines. They don't talk down to what I'm doing, but it's not for them. Just risk adverse. And then I've got others who were used to be neutral and now are coming to me in the last 6 months of saying, I think I'd like to do what you're doing. Tell me more. I want to. One friend of mine, she's renting, really wants to buy. She says, tell me about what you do. I think you're a total badass, Jillian. Tell me.
well,
What a
sure,
compliment.
because you're riding motorcycles, traveling around. I feel like you're traveling around North America on board. Taylor's patting her mom on the back there. If you're listening to this and you don't see that, yeah, pretty cool, right? But you are pretty much a badass, like,
Yeah.
for real. You're driving. I feel like every time I see a picture of you, you're somewhere on a motorcycle tour around North America somewhere,
Probably
next to
wearing
some
the
cliff,
Rockstar
wearing a
t-shirt.
Rockstar t-shirt, next to some dangerous thing. I don't know. In my mind, it's like a mountain or a cliff or something.
Usually, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's kind of cool to hear. And then, sorry though, I cut you off on that. So where did that lead?
Of late, I've had a few people come to me and say, do you have some, lease agreements you can share with me? And I go, well, there's been a standard lease for about 5 years now, but anyway, no. They say, can you have a lease agreement, or how do you get started, or I have no idea about the financing aspect of things, or how do you do the numbers, stuff like that. And I'll help them. I'm happy to help them. I want to help them. We need more people who are that level of financial literacy and capability.
Yeah. And it's funny because through my own network, I think for the first 10 years of starting this business, we almost got no one. There are a few people who are Rockstar members for a long time from my previous software life, but in general, hardly any. Mm-hmm. And then now in the last 6 months or maybe 18 months,
18 probably.
yeah, it has been a turnaround where people are like connecting with me through LinkedIn saying, hey, we haven't chatted in a long time. I need to pick up some property. I know I'm a little late to the party.
Yeah, they search
Where
you
do
out.
I get started? And I feel like it's been a big change. I think people are, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's people realizing that, oh my gosh, I need more hard assets in my life or diversification.
No, I truly think it's people have not made the connection with quantitative easing and money printing and their asset going up. So they just see that their assets, so their homes are going up, and they're going up phenomenally, right? Like in Guelph, it's 47, 48% over 2 years. I mean, where else do you get that type of growth, right?
Yeah.
And so people say, oh my God, I really want to get on that bandwagon. And so I think they're just
So it's
seeing,
chasing the number.
Yeah, it's chasing the number.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're probably right.
They have not. In my conversations, people haven't connected that this is part of a bigger problem. Mm-hmm. They're just seeing that their assets gone up. Oh my God, that is amazing. I want to get on that.
Well, the flip side of that is the people are seeing that the groceries are more expensive, gasoline's more expensive. I don't know, you name it, it's going up. Every time you go to the mall or anywhere, it's more expensive. And I rephrased the statement to the point of, well, our dollar is buying less. We have less buying power. And so, because I said there's a lot of dollars in the system. Serb, anyone? So our dollar buys less than it did a year ago. And so we're having to manage that. And the way to manage that is to buy something that increases with, how should we say that?
More
the
than
asset value.
yeah.
It goes up greater than the decreasing value of the dollar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Jillian, you brought 2 books with you here. Have you always been a reader? Like, have you always invested in your own personal development, or is this something that's come at a different part of your life? Where does that come from?
I read in fits and starts, so I get into a bit of a bender for a while. I read a bunch of stuff, and then other parts of my life take over, and I'll drop it off for a while.
I'm the same way.
But I'm trying to be more disciplined. Instead, in the evening watching the screen, I'm trying to pick up the book and stay with that.
And then what about your journeys on the motorcycle? What's the background to all that?
Well, that's out of left field.
Yeah. I'm just trying to
how
figure
long
you out.
have you
Jillian,
had a
I'm
motorcycle?
trying to figure you out. I'm trying to figure you out.
How long have you had a motorcycle?
I bought the first bike in 2012, but I've had my license since 1993.
So why did you buy the first bike?
I decided, well, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. So I had the license, always had this big idea, this vision of me riding around,
cool.
enjoying the scenery, and didn't do it. I bought a house instead. So I got the license in 93, but then I subsequently bought a house. I said, well, there's no motorcycle in the budget now. Bought the house as a single
life catches
life
up to you,
catches
right?
up.
Crushes those dreams.
Crushes those
really
dreams.
Reality sets in.
Damn house.
So so many years went by, and then started a family, and then the kids were a little older. They were full time in school, and I looked at my life and I said, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. So I just and with that 8-plex, we had a nice little cash cushion in the bank account for the 8-plex. So I said, I could actually buy a bike with none of my own personal money that I labored for. I'm going to enjoy the fruits of my labor.
Oh, that's nice.
Let me pull out. It was only about $5,000 at the time. It wasn't like massive amounts of money. So in 2012, I pulled out $5,000, bought a little 250cc dirt bike, dual sport, on-road, off-road, Yamaha. And I had my license. I took a refresher course because I hadn't ridden for a long time, and then just started riding that. And then it took off from there. And then I decided if I get a proper street bike that carries luggage, I could do extended trips. And like I said, it took off from there.
And what are some of the
Arizona, Colorado, Nova Scotia.
Really?
Yeah.
All on your bike?
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
How long does it take you to get to Arizona on your bike?
Well, truth be told, that one, the Arizona trip was, I combined it with a pharmaceutical sales meeting.
Perfect.
In Phoenix.
So the hotel was paid for. The meals were paid for.
So how did you do that?
The company... No. I'll explain. So the company flew us out for the conference. It was a 4-day conference in Phoenix, stayed at a hotel. And then I had arranged to fly back, not with everybody else in the company, but 4 days forward after that. And I'd also arranged for a motorcycle rental. So the conference ends, everyone else flies home. I took a taxi to the rental place, got a rented Yamaha FGR 1300, and then I rode that around Arizona for 4 days, and then returned it to the rental place, jumped on a plane, and went home.
That is
very
so
cool.
Yeah.
That is so freaking cool.
I think that was
You are a
2014.
badass.
You are, and you like
badass
doing this all by yourself.
Well, no, I was with a partner. So I have a new partner in my life, and so he and I went. So he flew down, also rented a bike, and then met me. So we did the 4
And
days.
then on
very
some
nice.
of these tours, do you do it with other groups of people who are motorcycle enthusiasts or something? Or no, is it always like when you're going to Nova Scotia, is that leaving from this area and going out there?
Yeah, that was direct from Ontario, from here.
And is that with a bigger group or no?
No, that was just the two of us,
Wow.
myself and my partner. Now, I am a part of a pretty active motorcycle group, but I don't do group trips with those people. It's more like we do conferences together and talk about our trips, show slideshows, learn about mechanical stuff, and just travel. Like learn about travel, and that would be somewhere in Ontario, like somewhere in cottage country.
How was the trip out to Nova Scotia? I've never been out there.
It was amazing. It was awesome.
My husband just
Bay of Fundy,
went out
very
there.
windy up the tunnel, up the Bay of Fundy. In fact, there's windmills, and I remember riding the bike and being keeled over, just to counteract the sheer force of the wind on this side and the centrifugal or the gyroscopic stability of the bike on this side, just to stay up.
Gyroscopic stability.
Gyroscopic stability.
Jillian, I think that's like pretty fascinating. You had this idea, then you bought the first house and started a family. And I think so many people, we all get into that group, a little bit of that rut. And you just seem to, and Deirdre, you too, there's a moment where you just are like, screw it, I'm cracking out of this thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like some people that I see in my life who have not done that yet, you can see the misery increasing. I laugh because some of these are my friends. I shouldn't laugh. They're good friends. We make fun of each other all the time. This is allowed. This is purely allowed. This is allowed.
I call it the soul-crushing misery.
The soul-crushing misery of life, of just doing the same thing over and over. And I don't know. You guys seem very cheerful. I don't know if it's a man thing, but I feel like when men hit a certain age, they just get grumpier and grumpier and grumpier.
Maybe it's because they know what they've missed out.
Yeah, maybe. The misery just compounds.
Yeah.
Since everything is miserable.
I never, ever wanted to get to that point. So I said, I've got to make a change sooner than later before I'm too far gone down that rabbit hole.
It's true. I sort of did the same thing because I was in corporate life. Then I went back to school. And then I went into pharma. And then I went into real estate. So, yeah.
So what would you tell, so both of you, what would you tell Taylor listening to this when she falls into some period of her life, like we all do, that's either a rut or, where you're just kind of down a little bit. You're like, you're feeling like shit.
Yeah.
Same.
You know what I'm talking about?
Different day, same shit.
Yeah.
But it's just endless. Like,
I have
like Groundhog Day.
Yeah. I have a certain set of habits that I kind of are my go-to for those moments. What would you share with Taylor? Like if she's in a period of her life where it's 6 months and not feeling the greatest. Everything's feeling like Groundhog Day. Let's call it her late 20s. That's her period of her life. And I'm asking you, Jillian, what advice would you give Taylor to crack out of that?
Well, I would say, I give Taylor a voice here to say...
You're up next, Deirdre.
I think, Taylor, if you're willing to maybe share what your next, say, 12 months look like as your plan, because you're graduating. And
absolutely.
You're not going to take maybe the standard path, just if you want to share.
Oh, good for you. I tried to convince my kids not to, and they were bound and determined.
They said they had to go to university after it? Oh, wow.
Because all their friends were going. They weren't going to miss it.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've definitely been able, growing up, to see a lot of options that aren't the default path. And I very much made the decision for myself that it's not what I want. My next 12 months, after school ends, I am going to work at a summer camp during the summer. And then I am leaving Canada. I am spending a whole year traveling the world, working as I go. I want to see the world. I want to gain new experience. I want to become independent. And then when I get back to Canada, I'm going to start working on my investing, building a real estate portfolio, possibly working in the trades while I'm building that, having my good bank-approved T4 to really get that lending.
Oh, there we go. There's the real estate investing experience.
Yes,
Get me that T4 so I can qualify. Yeah,
exactly.
So I very much have seen that, that sort of like dead, just doing the same thing every day attitude on other people. And life is a gift. It's very important to use it to the best of your ability because it's all you get. So it's very important to me to make the most of everything, and I'm creating a plan for me to do that.
Wow, you are. That is,
you don't need advice from any of us. So you're
insightful
good.
and articulate and really forward thinking.
Thank you. I mean, I've heard a lot of people, even just here at this table today, talking about when they had that moment as an adult, often picking up a Robert Kiyosaki book. And Jillian actually...
She's your mom. That's allowed.
Yeah.
That's allowed.
Yeah. Actually suggested I'd start reading one of his books, and I did. And something I noticed is it didn't have the same impact on me that a lot of other people have professed. And I think the big difference in my upbringing is that I've already been exposed to a lot of those ideas in various ways, through my mom, through Rockstar, through just being younger than you guys, having access to the internet.
A lot younger.
Rub it in.
Yeah.
So I've just already had that experience and had my mind opened in that way. So I've just always had that perspective, whereas for other people, they sort of gained that later in life already as adults.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so true. And being able to have that exposure has given you, you're right, you're already thinking differently than people who are just on the main path. You know, you go to school, get a good job, work hard, hope for, a promotion so you make more money, so you can work harder to get another promotion, to work harder.
To get more stress.
Yeah.
As every high
Pay more
schooler
taxes.
does.
Get sick.
Pay more taxes.
As every high schooler does, as every middle schooler, I've considered, well, what career would I be happy with? What field would I want to go into for the rest of my life? And something that a conclusion I really came to thinking over that for years as going through the grades is there is none. There is nothing like job-wise that I just want to be, well, this will be the rest of my life working like this. I want to do real estate. I want to get things working. I want my money to work for me so I don't have to. I want the freedom to travel the world, to do my own creative projects, to do what I want to do rather than being stuck to making money so I can live.
So interesting that at your age, that book didn't have that impact on you, because I think for us, we had never been exposed to that type of thinking at all.
No.
So that's why the Kiyosaki book was such this like hit over the head almost, like, wow, I'm really on the wrong path here. So for you to have that understanding now, That's amazing. I'm just trying to think what are the dangers of having this understanding that we could then share with you. But I don't know what they are.
Your son Aiden is also of that mindset, is he not?
Yeah, Aiden's of the same mindset. Yeah, he's kind of like, I think he's resigned himself to the fact that university will like be a check mark item. Like, okay, went to university, check it off. But in no way is there a correlation to his financial future or his happiness as a person because of a university degree. Whereas I always went to university thinking graduating that guarantees my financial future.
So did I.
Yeah,
that's
so
what
that's
we were taught. That's what we were
that's
told.
yeah,
right?
and I think he's
to get a good job, you needed that university
degree,
education.
at least.
You weren't going to succeed without it.
Yeah.
At least that's what I
and
heard.
maybe it's because my parents anyway, they didn't come from much at all, so they thought if you're educated, this was the way. So it's no fault of theirs. This is just the system that we were kind of born into.
And what about your daughter?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's now thinking she really she loves real estate. She loves design.
She's in grade 10, right?
She's in grade 10 right now.
Okay.
So she's having different thoughts about what she would like to explore. And then because Aiden's 19 turning 20, he's been saving a little longer than her, working a little bit more than her. So his savings has grown a little bit and she's pretty competitive. So he's now gearing up to, he's got a certain amount of Bitcoin. He wants to buy his first rental property.
Good for
and
him.
she's like, well, Dad, the prices of these things keep going up. And if I keep saving at this, arrangement that we have with this allowance, because I'm basically kept them both to the same on an allowance for different things she has to do.
Yeah.
And she's like, this really isn't going to work out too well because the prices of things are increasing.
She's telling
She's
you
totally
prices
figured
are
it out.
rising faster than you can keep up.
I
She's
brought
totally
this up
figured
with
it out.
my mom the other week.
Yeah, did you? Yeah, so you guys have like hacked the system. You're like, hey, this is a little bit of a scam because my allowance is not increasing at the rate that properties are increasing.
Exactly.
They're kind of going like this.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my teachings are backfiring on me
that's
now.
the house prices and the wages.
Yeah, the income is not keeping up with the asset price. I'm like, good for you. That's the way the world is. You figure out how to get around it,
That's
okay?
number one.
Yeah,
Did you hear this? The first rule of economics is scarcity. The first rule of politics is to ignore the first rule of economics.
Yeah, perfect. That's a perfect summary, totally. Deirdre, were you always a reader? Like now, you're talking about crypto and stuff, and I'm kind of laughing because our mom, who I won't share her age, but we, she's got some Bitcoin and stuff.
Yeah.
Our father, he can't manage an iPhone, but we're trying to get him some Bitcoin right now, just on a hot wallet on his phone, more for fun to say he did it than anything. At the age of, let me get it right, 82. Why are you down this path right now and the crypto path? What's capturing your interest there? Like,
so
is
listening
this because
to you
you're
guys,
a reader?
I'm a reader, and I'm kind of like Jillian. I kind of go hard on reading, and then I take breaks, and then I go back to reading. And so right now I'm in a reading mode. I think listening to you guys and reading and the Bitcoin standard and stuff, realizing every fiat system dissolves, fails at some point. And we are watching our fiat system fail slowly over time. I used to think it was going to happen like in a week. And now I realize it doesn't happen.
It's a slow motion train wreck.
Yeah, it is.
It's a train wreck that's just happening in slow motion, right? And you kind of see it happening, and you look around to the rest of the world like, hey, do you see what's happening here?
Yeah.
And no one else sees it because it happens in this slow motion.
Everyone says crypto, it's way too volatile.
Yeah.
Except my niece's husband is really into stocks and crypto, and so when I go out and visit them, we have a good conversation. But yeah, so it was preserving wealth, really. That's what really intrigued me was, you're right, it's just math, as he says. And it was a way to preserve wealth. And I thought, you're right, this is happening. Every fiat currency since time has always failed at some point, and we are in that moment right now.
You know what I heard in the news? With this problem between Russia and Ukraine, the war, that the Russian ruble is devaluing at a drastic rate. I think it lost something like 60% of the value.
Oh yeah, it went off a cliff.
And people are trying to buy U.S. dollars.
US cent.
Yeah.
Well, yes. So people are trying to acquire U.S. dollars wherever they can in Russia, but no one wants to buy the ruble. So talk about fiat money going downhill. That's happening in a week's time.
Yeah. Exactly, because it's lost confidence, which is what you guys talk about.
I love you guys. You guys are speaking my language.
We're just
we're
regurgitating what you told us.
Just keep going.
So I was listening to something this morning as I was stuffing envelopes, but could Russia and China collectively change the dollar's reserve status? And this actually talks about China and Russia, but China going to a cryptocurrency that is actually gold backed.
Oh.
Interesting. And that they're working on that. So it was kind of an interesting article, but it just shows that even countries are looking for alternatives to the dollar.
I heard India was adopting cryptocurrency. Is that right? India?
They have one of the most forward-looking kind of I don't know if it's not quite a CBDC, but mobile kind of financial. Keith on our team here was just back from Mumbai in India, and it was just telling me how advanced they are in some of their mobile applications and their ability to pay for things. But I think it's their own kind of crypto that they're trying to do. It's not something like Bitcoin.
Okay. And I would agree with that, because like I understand that, because I remember several years ago, like in Africa, mobile apps and paying on your mobile phone was way ahead of where we were in North America, simply because they didn't have the infrastructure. So it was a way to pay each other because they didn't have the infrastructure. And I'm sure India is kind of similar. They probably don't have the infrastructure that we have.
Mm-hmm. Just listening to all of you speak, I'm interested in your opinion. For women listening to this right now, if they're maybe on their own, what would you tell them about getting into real estate? Is there some advice? Like, I don't know, maybe you have better thoughts into what's going through their mind than I would. Like, is there a fear that they need to overcome, or is there something that they should be thinking that perhaps you can help them with? What comes to mind when I say that?
Yeah, certainly I think fear. Can you do it on your own? Can I afford it on my own? And
will I get ripped off maybe?
Yeah, and you know what? That's really the number one question I often get about real estate investing is bad tenants, tenants and toilets. And I go, the number one thing that I deal with? Appliances. And they go, really? Mm-hmm. And you could almost see them like relax. I go, yeah, appliances is the number one thing I've always had to deal with.
So you haven't dealt with the major fear of tenant is going to damage my a lot of people are like, they're going to take a sledgehammer and they're just going to punch holes in all the walls of everything in my house.
No, because I've, knock wood, I've always had really good tenants. And I've learned a lot from listening to other people at Rockstar and what's happened with them. So it's kind of like what not to do or how to avoid doing something. So I've always had really great tenants. So that was never a fear of mine. But I also was probably pretty good at screening people. Mm-hmm. So, and I set the expectation high.
Why were you good at screening? What were you looking for? Income, gut feel? Because I'm the gut feel person. Yeah. Nick's the income person. So he's basically by the paper, and I'm like, there's just something wrong. There's something, I'm feeling something off with these people.
Yeah. And both. Yeah, you need both. You need both. Yeah, so their income, but also I try and listen to what they're not telling me. So they'll focus on, this story always stuck. So I have a property in Hamilton Mountain. Guy came to me. And had I not been at Rockstar, I probably would have fallen for this. He said, I'll give you $100 more a month. And I would have thought, $100, yeah, I'll take that. But then I went, so what do you do for a living? Oh, I drive, I do snow removal in the winter and then in the summer, like grass, landscaping, stuff like that. And I thought, no, I'm not going to take the $100 because you know what? What if we have a really dry Christmas or a dry winter and you're not really working that much? So, but had I not had that sort of insight, I probably would have been attracted to the dollars and said, $100.
It's very tempting, isn't it?
It is very tempting. Yeah. When you're adding that onto your cash, that's totally
it's pure profit.
Yeah. I kind of went, not going. So it's kind of like looking at what jobs do they have? What's the likelihood that that company is going to go down or they're going to be downsized, having been downsized a number of times? Things like that. What's their story? Like I have tenants who he doesn't work, he's on disability, but she works for the hospital and she has a really stable job.
So you feel like just a secure situation?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so overall, the fears, if someone's listening to this and haven't jumped in, from your opinion, the fears don't come quite true.
Never.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Never.
Wow, okay. And Jillian, what about yourself? Taylor, I'm coming to you next. I'm going to ask your opinion on this.
I would take the mantra from yourself and Nick about, stuff will go wrong. Expect stuff to go wrong, but plan ahead, be ready for it mentally, and have your power team in place so you know who to call when. Promptly. And I got to say, the Telegram VIP group has been invaluable. I know Deirdre's active on it as well. I'm on it a lot, and the amount of
just
information
sharing
coming there.
Yeah, just sharing
It's almost like a
content.
support group,
It
right?
is.
Oh my God, it is.
Yes.
It's an
This
emotional
happened to me
support
today.
group.
I'm, and then
Yes.
other people are like, oh yeah, you think that's bad? Well, this happened to me, and you somehow feel a little bit better.
But it's not a pity party either.
No.
Not at all.
No,
We're
sure.
all people who take care of ourselves.
Totally.
We're able to take care of ourselves,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it just helps to support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To vent. It's just like nice, like.
Well, here's the thing. Having found Rockstar has been a huge, like you and Nick have done a phenomenal job in terms of creating a community that is very supportive. And also, as you say, like bringing on other members who and their experiences, because had I not heard of that, I would have thought I'm the only one going through it, or that's going to be a huge issue. And then when you see other people and they've gone through it, you go, okay, yeah, you can deal with that.
I think that's what freaked Nick and I out when we were or we felt we were by ourselves, when tenants would call us about mold or about
Water in the basement.
water in the basement,
Yeah.
or about late rent, and we didn't quite know how to handle it. And the lawyers that we knew at that time really couldn't. They didn't engage with us. We didn't know great people like Kelly Hawks to bounce questions off
Yeah.
of, and you just felt petrified.
Yeah.
Like multiple times, I would call Nick thinking, I've ruined our lives because we have a leak in the basement that we can't quite afford. I don't know where to get the money. And not only that, I don't know who to call. I don't know how long this is going to take. And the lack of information scares you.
Yes.
That's actually
The
worse.
lack of
That's worse than the problem. It's
Yeah.
the scared about and the lack of information about handling the problem.
Yeah,
That's
and I
right.
think that's why what you're saying about that Telegram VIP
Yeah.
group is really useful, because if you're missing a piece of information, you can quickly put your situation out there and someone else. And I really have to thank every Rockstar member who's a part of that, because they can then respond saying, well, hey, Jillian, check this out. And it just instantly puts your mind at ease.
And I think, you know what, getting back to your question about women, I think women are much more want a support mechanism in place, and they're more collaborative.
Got it.
And
yeah.
so I think
you're right.
wanting-
Guys are not always the most collaborative group.
I do.
Well,
I think
this
women.
VIP group is pretty good.
It
There's
is,
a lot
yeah.
of men will
Yeah.
weigh in with
Totally.
their ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in general,
In general,
sort of, I think, you know, if we're talking in generalizations, I think women are tend to be more collaborative, and they want that sort of support. So having that certainly helped me. If I had to have done this on my own, I probably never would have taken the first step.
And the only reason we haven't opened that up wider is Nick and I didn't want to police some kind of social media group, because it just turns into people posting different things. And, you know, this is kind of unique the way this
And the
one's worked
VIP
out.
group is a great size. You're
Yeah.
right.
That one's worked.
It
It's really worked out.
Yeah, it's worked out perfectly.
Taylor, I'm curious. So for other people in grade 12 who are scared about their future, you seem to have thought through this a lot. What would you tell them? Maybe they hear you and they're like, well, I'm going to be forced to go to university, and now this sucks because I hear Taylor and she's saying you're not saying not to go, but that it's not your path. What do you tell someone your age when they're trying to figure out their future? What kind of advice would you have for them? And I'm not sure if I don't think there's a perfect answer, but what comes to mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, on questions like that, like the previous one that was asked about young women getting into real estate, jumping in for the first time, a strategy I use there is you kind of just have to decide that failure isn't an option. That's when I had to save up a lot of money in a very short period of time when I had no work experience, because I wanted to go to Quebec for 3 months on an exchange, and I was going to do it. I don't care if you don't believe me. To people who didn't believe me. That was something I was doing, and I was determined to succeed at that. And I worked really hard. I got a job. I got 2 jobs. I was working a lot, and I made enough money. I decided I was going to do it, and I did. And the important part of that strategy is you decide failing isn't an option, and then you look at what you need to do to not fail. It's like, I have to succeed at this. How do I succeed? Because it's just what I have to do. There aren't other options. So that's a mindset that I think has helped me. For people who are in grade 12, feel uncertain about their future, I think it's important to really pick your head up, look around the world, look at the options, especially options that do not resemble the beaten path, and just think about what do you want out of your life? I want to have freedom to be able to choose what I want to do. If what I want to do changes in 5 years, I want to be able to just do that. So I think figure out what your goals are and just work on moving towards that. I think also the value I have, like how important my life is, it's like this is all I get. It's important to like go for what you want and not wait for it. Like if you have family pressure, if you're afraid, if you feel like it won't work out, it's still important to go for it. And I think when you're younger like this, it's scary, of course. You've lived with your parents your whole life. You don't have experience being independent, living on your own. But it's also a good opportunity to do the things that are riskier, that you aren't sure if they'll work out, because you don't have those responsibilities that if you follow the beaten path, you will have later on. You'll have your university debt. You might have a partner. You want to stay with them. You might want to have kids, get a house somewhere. You'll have a job. You don't want to leave that. Right out of high school is actually a very good time to start doing those things that you're afraid of.
Wow.
I guess excited to meet Taylor in 10 years to see what she's doing with her life, because it's you're on a great path.
Her.
Yeah, you're on a great path. You're on a great path. Thanks for sharing all that, Taylor.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Good insights.
Yeah, totally. I don't think I was thinking in those ways at your age, so that's
definitely
exciting
was not
to hear.
Thinking.
I wasn't. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking,
where's
everyone going on the weekend?
Yes, exactly.
Where are we going on the weekend? That's what I was thinking. So
really, am I meeting everyone
really
for
great.
the party?
Pleasure to learn more about you, Taylor, and what goes through your mind. And thanks for sharing that. I don't think that's really easy to do, and you articulate it so well.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing.
And it's not about the job, it's sort of a lifestyle and what you want out of that lifestyle, and what do I need to do to propel that lifestyle, to create that lifestyle.
Taylor's life, Taylor's terms.
Yeah,
Taylor's life,
totally.
Taylor's terms.
There we go.
Love
we got
it.
a T-shirt. So thank you, all of you. Jillian, are we handing out contact info? No. If someone wants to reach out to Jillian, they can reach out to the Rockstar office, and we will put you in touch. Jillian, anything else you wanted to share before we start to wrap up here?
Well, it's been a real pleasure. I've had a nice connection with Deirdre over the years. We just stayed acquainted through different connections, and it's lovely that way to be like-minded. I'm so glad there's Rockstar here, because I can bring Taylor in. She accompanies me whenever she can to go to these properties when I have to take care of repairs.
I can see how proud of you you are of her. It's incredible to see.
Well, and I'm lucky. This one's going to take off in the fall to do your travels, likely France, to become fluent in French. And she's still very young, so I said, well, you're not going by yourself just yet. I'm going to go with you and stay with you and do the traveling together for at least 3 to 4 weeks.
Cool.
So I get to go to France this fall as well.
I love that excuse. That's a great excuse.
That's what I need. So that is the plan. So I'm very proud of my daughter, and I'm happy that this community is here. That's my thing.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, awesome. And Deirdre, anything else you want to share? I don't know. Nothing comes to my mind, but if something comes to yours.
Yeah, no, I am so thankful for you and Nick and Rockstar.
You guys you're too kind. You are too kind.
No, it's true.
You would have found your own path, and we just all happened to meet each other at the time where we were all having these thoughts, I think.
And I'm really and I'm happy that I'm on this path, because one of my daughters is, as I mentioned, Sophie is really into crypto and finding and real estate investing, and I just think what an opportunity she has in front of her. Hopefully our other daughter will somehow find this path.
Everyone's on their own path.
Exactly.
Everyone's on their own path.
But I'm so happy about that, because it's just an entirely different outlook than what I had when I was going in grade 13, when they had grade 13, and going to university, and what I thought was what success looked like.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. This one's into Bitcoin by now too, eh?
Yeah,
I have my own Bitcoin.
You bought it and
that
sold
message is approved. That message is approved right there. Yeah.
I heard some guy on Instagram, don't know who he is, and he said, Bitcoin, okay, every week just just buy something. If it's $1, $5, $10, $100, whatever it is, just buy it every week. You will be in a good position 10 years from now.
Yeah, it really feels that way. And if you haven't done your research on it, it sounds crazy.
It does sound crazy.
You have to understand what you're doing. But awesome, Taylor. Any last words? Anything that comes to mind, Taylor?
It's been very wonderful to be here. It was mentioned I'm not in school because this is a better opportunity. I love being here. I love networking. Thanks for the opportunity, Tom.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
I'm glad you both committed to doing this. So thanks for telling us that we should have more women
out of our
on the
comfort zone.
podcast.
Yeah, that was about 2.5 months ago, right?
Yeah,
we booked this.
Yeah. And so thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks for each of you for sharing your stories. And I feel we should do this again a little bit down the path and see where things end up.
Maybe Taylor could zoom in from France for the next one.
Yeah, Taylor, there you go. You can speak French for half the episode. I'll use my grade 11 French, which is non-existent anymore, and you can zoom in from France and give us an update.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tom.
Actually, one more thing. We're not ending yet. Deirdre, your contact information.
Oh,
yeah.
Cell phone 519-803-5715, and email is my first and last name. DEIRDRE Dunne DUNNE.sold@gmail.com.
And we didn't mention this, but because we kind of alluded to it, but you're active doing real estate in those cities that you mentioned.
Yeah, I'm a real estate broker.
Cambridge, Kitchener, Guelph,
and Waterloo.
And
surrounding area.
A real estate broker active today.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for someone who knows her stuff, you can reach out to Deirdre. We'll also put some contact information for you in the show notes of this episode.
Sure.
So anyone listening to this who wants to track you down can track you down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Awesome.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Tom.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.